Welcome to another episode of Chasing Squirrels. Today's episode, we have Steven Berkovitz, and he is the CTO at ParTech. Well, for today's episode, we'll call it Par to keep it simple. Thanks for coming on today, Steven.
Thanks so much for having me.
Do you want to give kind of a 30-foot, 1,000 level of what it is that Par does and what they're working on? And then I kind of want to jump into some of your background.
Sure. Our sort of tagline at Par is food, people, and nothing in between. Traditionally, historically, we've been a large hardware vendor for the POS space, but over the last 6 or 7 years, really pivoted into the software space. Our Brink POS product is deployed across many multinational brands that you've probably eaten at yourself. Ultimately, our goal at Par is to be the largest hospitality technology company in the world, and create really differentiated customer experiences, and connecting people in the food and all the experience that they want to have in between that.
That's awesome. I'm definitely going to dive into that shortly. Before that, I kind of want to jump into some of your background. So you have an interesting background in that you've actually been a co-founder before and started a company from scratch. So I'm curious if you want to talk a little bit about anything that's relevant before you started that company, but as an entrepreneur, I'm always curious how that happened.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a hacker, so to speak, my whole life. I started writing code when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and throughout my life, I've always sort of had business ventures in the technology space. A friend, one of my best friends, who became one of my business partners, we had a contract with the school board to manage some of their Windows NT infrastructure while we were in school. So it was always sort of entertaining to.
That's almost like Bill Gates and Paul Allen type of background where they're building software for their schools.
Yeah, and at the time I didn't have amazing hardware at home, and we had to deal with them. We got to use their lab and built some of our first products there. But ultimately, I was in university between my first and second year university, and most people went and got jobs as camp and stuff like that. And then my buddy came up to me and said, "Hey, I have this customer, and they want to build an e-commerce platform. Are you interested?" I said, "That sounds like a great summer project," and we did. And the funny thing with the e-commerce space is that Google has a lot of control. And one day they turned off the AdWords and the company disappeared. But I looked at it, I said, "I think we can build a product out of this." It was ASP at the time, before SaaS became the go-to word. Spent the next summer retooling it. And we ultimately launched the product that became OrderDynamics, which was our e-commerce product at the time. And we were very fortunate to be completely self-funded, no outside debt or anything like that. We were growing very organically. It came a time around, I think it was about 2008, and we sort of recognized we were just two tech guys. We didn't know much about anything else, and we brought on some other partners to help us continue to scale up the business on the sales and operations side. And for a while, we were doing our thing, gathering retailers across North America. One day around 2012, we were in the little 10-store Toronto retailer, and all of a sudden, Demandware was there, being super competitive on the price. We said, "Uh-oh." And we recognized that it's probably time for us to go and raise some funds. And one thing led to another. And we ended up being acquired by a company that was actually Demandware's biggest system integrator out of the UK. And that was really the sort of start of the scale up of OrderDynamics. At the time, we continued to sort of build out our e-commerce platform and order management capabilities, and then scale up the business. And as a founder, that was a lot of fun to have that ability to go do so. The company that acquired us had global teams too, so a lot of experience to how we scale it globally. How do we have engineering teams in Ukraine and India, North America, and London, and et cetera, and all the crazy stuff that came from that. I left there to join Tulip Retail, which was another Toronto startup that had just completed a big raise from Kleiner Perkins, and similar sort of insanity around the scale up. I remember one day in January we had 30 new people show up for work at a company of like 150. So you can imagine the energy, the insanity with it, but a lot of fun. And then I spent some time at Tecsys, which is a smaller publicly traded Canadian company in the supply chain space. And I now find myself at Par. And, Par is really interesting for me as a founder because it's a big old company, but that sort of wants to be a startup. And that's sort of where I come in. I think, how do we retool? How do we start working like a startup? And how do we take on this industry with our big audacious goals?
Real quick, because I have like, I feel like you skipped over like 50 probably good stories. The so you were building an e-commerce platform. So I'm thinking like Shopify, but old school style, or did you have like a main customer base that you were building the e-commerce platform, or
Yeah,
what was?
it was a multi-tenant SaaS e-commerce platform for initially the medium-sized businesses, and then eventually the sort of larger enterprise. I remember being on a panel with Harley from Shopify, and he said, "Oh, I'll give you our customers when they get too big for us." So that was sort of where we played. If you've grown up from Shopify and you're ready to sort of be a bit more in the enterprise space, it's where we played.
Okay. And then in that journey, what were like one or two technical learnings that were like disasters or emergencies at the time that you ended up fixing? I feel like those are always the good engineering stories.
I think there's a good saying, every time something doubles, everything breaks. And I think, your customer size doubles and your technology breaks. Actually, everything breaks in your company, like finance, legal, account, it all breaks. But the technology is what people feel the most. So it's certainly that, no shortage of challenges around scaling up the software. Thankfully that the cloud has made that a lot more palatable, and that, it's easy enough to throw money at the problem, at least initially, and then build your way out of it. Along the way, lots of crazy. I remember, back when we were doing Colo, we had a data center fire at one point, and I was out in
like an actual fire.
Yeah, the whole fire data center gets shut down. I was actually traveling. I was in Las Vegas, and you're getting a call saying, "Sorry, but we had to pull the power on the data center. The fire department's here, and we're not allowed inside. We'll call you back soon." And you're just saying like, "Oh God." Luckily, it did not burn to the ground, and it was just some battery banks that came up, and no water or anything was used, but certainly some heart attacks along the way. Happy at least now to be in the cloud and not be my problem for the most part. But yeah, I think that the scale of software is always a challenge. And even more recently with COVID in the e-commerce space, when COVID hit, all of a sudden we went from our peak days of Black Friday and Cyber Monday to actually being the norm. And all of a sudden, Black Friday was 10x last year, and this is challenging for the biggest of companies with the biggest of scale. Luckily, we always had a lot of agility on our team and lots of really good people, and we were able to work our way through it without too much carnage along the way. But I'm a little grayer and wiser because of it, I hope.
That's awesome. Are there? I saw you were also kind of a startup advisor or founder, and kind of help people that are getting started out in their early tech careers. Are there some common technical mistakes that you see a lot of like early? I mean, it's weird because people call themselves CTO as soon as they start a company, right?
Yeah.
So I'll call them CTOs for sake of argument. But are there early CTOs that make the same technical mistakes? And I'm curious if you end up finding yourself giving the same advice to those people and what that advice usually is.
For sure. And it's usually around keep it simple and be pragmatic. A lot of people love getting deep into, I'm going to use this AWS service and this, that, and all this stuff, because it's fun to play with and it's cool technology. But ultimately that stuff typically, especially in the very early stages, gets in your way of building products. If you're doing an MVP, you don't need a DynamoDB. You don't need Spanner. A lot of times you just need a JSON file, right? And keep it simple and learn and iterate. One thing I've learned is what you set out to do on day one is seldom what you do on day 100. Your product at the end usually doesn't look like what you thought it was going to be. And if you over-engineer on day one, you end up just creating yourself a lot of technical debt that is really difficult to get out of. Versus keeping it really simple, you have a lot of agility to pivot. And when you start sort of finding what's working and where you're going to play, that's when you start investing into the, how am I going to scale to a billion users? But most startups don't have to scale to a billion users. They only have to scale to a couple hundred. And I think a lot of people get sort of sidetracked into I have a billion users, I need to use all these services and all this stuff. And it just keeps you from actually iterating on your idea.
Is there, once they get to the next stage and start the hiring process, I'm curious what some of your insights are of, I really like the story where 30 people just show up one day and are like, all right, we're here to do something. But in terms of like the hiring process and finding good people to surround yourself with, do you have any insights or advice around kind of a process you followed or that you found that works?
Well, I think, one thing to consider, and maybe I'm not sure if this directly answers your question, is that, the people you start with are not always the same type of people you need as you scale up. And it's one of the hardest things actually, going from a startup into the scale is figuring that out. I remember the first developer I ever hired, I had to let him go. And it wasn't because he wasn't a great guy and he wasn't a good developer. He just wasn't what I needed. So recognizing what you're going to need and the type of people, and then going after them, and realizing that's not what you might have today is always important. And certainly as you scale up, you always get a little bit more specialized. You stop finding just everyone as a generalist, and you start finding very specific disciplines, whether it's on engineering or DevOps or quality or operations. So recognizing the type of people you're going to need and how they're going to be different is important. And I think too, hiring ahead. You always have to sort of be ahead of the curve and anticipating what you're going to need. If you need 2 people tomorrow and you hire 2 people, by the time you get them in, you're going to need 10 more. And sort of, what I've seen with some startups that do really well is they think really big. And I think, Tulip was one of those. We are going to have 30 people start today, and it is 15 or 20% of our total people count. But this is what we need, and this is what we need to scale and to go do what we want to do. And I feel it's very much the same here at PAR. We have, I think, as you alluded to, I can't even count the number of roles that we have open right now. And, we have big, audacious goals, and this is what we're going to need and who we're going to need to go do them. And then some. This is just our Q1 and our Q2, never mind Q3 and Q4.
So I want to get into the one last question before I get into the PAR stuff, because I have a lot of questions about the all the stuff you guys are working on. It sounds like you got to a point in the business you started where you were like, all right, I guess we need to raise money. So I'm curious if your personal thoughts on raising money changed at all from, I think we should avoid this because we want to kind of bootstrap it, to like, oh no, actually, once you get the ball rolling, like this is a huge advantage that you have. I'm curious if your mindset shifted on that, because I know some people are on one side of the fence or the other, and it usually reflects their personal experience.
I think a lot of the raises have gotten just too big. Every day someone else is raising 40 or 50 million, and that's great. But the money can also make you lazy. When it's really easy to throw money at problems, you don't always tackle things as pragmatically or tactically as you can. And there's something about being constrained where you do really good work. I think it's the reason why startups are so disruptive, and big companies who have all the funds in the world can't tackle the things that startups do. The money doesn't solve the problem. In fact, a lot of times it makes it worse. So there's a balance between what you need and what you're going to need to fund the business and grow the business, versus having way too much money available and then just having lots of pressure to hire hundreds of people if you're not quite ready for it. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of startups get themselves into quite a pickle with that. A lot of them are obviously very successful, and there's lots of success stories coming out, but there's a lot of stories that aren't so successful. And I think in some cases the venture capital funding side of it is had an impact on it. VCs, they're great, but they're gamblers too, right? If you go invest $40 million in a bunch of companies, I think they see it, as a bit of a crapshoot. 1 or 2 of them are going to become unicorns and they'll make their billions, and the rest won't. It's tough to hear as the founder who's taking that in, but I think it's really important to realize that and to make sure you're looking out for your interests and what makes sense for you. If you think you can take that 40 and deploy it well, then do it. But if you don't know what to do with it, maybe 10 or 15 is good for you right now, and go get the 50 later.
A lot of wisdom in that. I like it. So I do want to talk about PAR and what attracted you to there based on your previous experience. Was it more what they were working on with the tech problems that they need to solve, or a combination of the two?
A bit of all. On the pure corporate side, one thing that I thought was really interesting was it's really old company with a big history, but that had been very recently sort of rebooted and recapitalized. So it's a new executive team, and the company is recapitalized. There's lots of money available to go do what we want to do, and we're setting our sights really high. So I'm a startup guy. I'm a founder. What are you doing at some big publicly traded company? It's sort of a mini startup inside of a big publicly traded company. And, a lot of the stuff that I'm working on with the new management team is how do we make the company work a bit more like a startup, not actually a startup, but
right.
Some of our values right now are really around speed, ownership, and impact. Right. And I think those resonate a lot with what you try to do at a startup, work fast, have people own things, and make a big impact. So it's sort of the blend of both worlds for me. I get to go work at a company that's well funded and well established, good practices, lots of people that do the work, but also the audacity to go tackle some hard problems and have the the backing to go do it. It's sort of a bit of a change for me to have the CEO sort of beg me to go hire more people and spend more money as quickly as I can. It's a lot of fun, also a lot of stress, but also very much fun.
What are some of the things that you're looking forward to the most? I know you alluded to a few things you guys are knocking out in the next few quarters that you are working on solving.
Um, as far as solving, I think we're really focused on our new platform. That's not just about the point of sale, but it's the APIs that connect restaurants to their customers and loyalty and everything in between that. We've seen it. I think, Uber Eats and DoorDash and all that stuff has had a really big impact on restaurants, especially in these COVID times. But to the detriment to the customer, because those restaurants are losing those customers. They become Uber customers and DoorDash customers, not customers of the brand.
Right.
And everything that we're working on is about connecting that together, having those restaurants own that relationship and own that experience, and leveraging our platform to deliver it.
So I went extensively through your guys' website, watched a lot of videos, and so there were interviews with some of your data science team and engineering team that they were like the way that restaurants interact with their customers and food, the speed at which the food is delivered will change over the next coming decade. And so I'm curious, in what ways is that going to happen, or what does the future of that look like from the restaurant experience when we're actually allowed to go back out in public?
Yeah. So there are a couple different pieces that are happening. I think the notion of an individual restaurant that either does delivery or takeout is you're starting to see a bit more sort of kitchen concepts where there's a single kitchen facility that might own multiple brands and able to deliver the food for multiple different brands from one single location. So a lot of interesting efficiency gains from that, as well. The software to power it and to connect that all together. From a table service point of view, I think increasingly people are going to be looking to their mobile devices for how they interact. Even post-COVID, the days of passing pens and paper around to sign things, and I think that's probably on its way out. And people are now sort of increasingly like, I took my mask off, I ate. How do I get out of here really quickly right now? Right? I don't want to sit here with my mask on. So how do I pay? How do I tip? How do I make this all very seamless? And that's very much where I think our software comes into play about enabling those experiences where someone can just get up and leave. It's like the Amazon Go experience for a restaurant where you just walk in and walk out, and you paid, you tipped, and you had a great experience, but it didn't require a lot of the sort of nuances to the touch points that we might have today.
What impact does the data science help you improve the customer experience? Because it's weird to think about, and I kind of gleaned this from one of the videos on your website, was kind of you guys, because you kind of have this, you guys do hardware, software. Like, I almost want to say you basically run the restaurant, basically, right? So like even in the Five Guys is another testimonial video you guys have on your website. And so, the member of their team was just like, I want to worry about running a restaurant. You guys kind of just keep them up to date on the latest technology and integrate that in. Like, it feels like you guys basically run everything from the hardware, the software, and the entire technology experience via phone all the way through. So I'm curious how you use that data to kind of improve the efficiency of the restaurants overall, and kind of like what benefit the restaurants have, other than they don't have to manage any of it, obviously, which they're not equipped to do as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of restaurants, certainly where we play in the quick serve area, they're not super high margin, right? So anytime, it's easy to sell things at 100% margin and be very lazy about it. But when the margins are a lot thinner, the efficiency is really key. So all about how, managing the inventory, efficient. What are you going to need today? What are you going to need tomorrow? What are you buying too much of and you're disposing that you shouldn't buy that you can save money on? How do we cut off, with like online orders, for example, if the kitchen gets really backed up, we don't want people to have a bad experience because we're slow. We'd rather say we can't take this order to the store. There's another store, a mile away, and we should get your food from that store because that's going to deliver the better customer experience. So it's around optimizing both the back office side of restaurants as far as their inventory and how they prepare food and the volumes of stuff they're ordering and using there, and then into the customer experience. Like, how do we make sure that we can deliver on what we committed? If we told them they're going to get it in 20 minutes, they better get it in 19 minutes. or less, right? Not 30. And how do we leverage the patterns of the restaurant, how many people are in there, how busy are their kitchens, to make sure that we can adhere to all of that.
What are some of the like we kind of talked about before, you guys are essentially, if you have any technical experience building stuff or solving hard technical problems, you probably have an opening for them right now on your team. What are some of the maybe 2 or 3 of like the key roles that you guys are looking for currently at this time?
So we're super hungry for senior engineers and developers across a number of our initiatives. So like many companies with a long history, we're going through the whole microservice adoption and conversion. So we have a lot of efforts involved on how we replatform our existing products into microservices and how we leverage those microservices across our offering. So lots of very sort of greenfield opportunities there. Like we're a couple of years into the initiative, but it's also a product with a long history, so there's many other parts to it. As well, we're building a new platform right now that we hope to be sort of the main platform API layer for everyone's interactions. And this is a brand new initiative that we're taking, that we're ramping up our teams on right now. Also, as part of every engineering team scaling out, you eventually have to look at how to go global. How do we have teams around the world working and following the sun and stuff? So we have a really cool role that we just opened called Software Development Manager of Global Teams. And it's really how do we take what we're doing here in North America, Canada, San Diego, Florida, how do we scale this globally? How do we make sure that the work can continue around the clock, that people don't have to get woken up at night because we have teams, in the day everywhere. So really looking for someone who has a lot of experience there to say, like, I've done this before and I can help you guys do this too. Of course, I'm a little biased. I think all the roles are great.
Right.
A lot of opportunity. And I think, one of the cool things about PAR is that we do so many things across software and hardware that there is lots of opportunity. If you joined as a software developer and said, hey, I actually want to help you guys build hardware, those opportunities are there too. So definitely a lot of room to move around, lots of initiatives, and we're ever increasing more. There's always a healthy friction between engineering and product. We're well aligned and we just want to keep doing more. And every time we have an idea, a new team hatches, and we need to fill lots of important roles on those teams.
It's always a huge advantage of larger organizations as well, is that if somebody gets bored with their current, like, hey, I've been working on the back end for a while. It's like, all right, what else do you want to work on? Right. Plenty of opportunity.
We're doing a lot of work, both on the, whether it's the infrastructure level, the platform level, the front end of our point of sale application, the web applications that are customer facing, and then everything in between. So there's no shortage of opportunity. I think we have a lot of the positions listed specifically on our site. It's there's a lot there. I would tell people who are thinking of applying, don't get caught up in any specific title. If you have the skill set and the attitude that we want, we'll find the position for you. We'll put you where it'll make you happy and that, you'll be productive. It's really about finding the right people.
And so do you guys have offices, like physical locations? And then are you working remote temporarily, permanently? That's always, one of the biggest questions now.
Yeah, and so historically, our primary development offices today are just outside of Toronto, San Diego, and Florida, Tampa, Florida. We are hiring remote globally right now, across North America. I think a lot of people miss the office. I certainly miss talking to people in person, but I think we're gearing up to be a remote company indefinitely. And there's so much demand for the technical talent that being able to hire anywhere opens up a lot of possibilities for us and a lot of talent for us. And I think for building an engineering team where you're always hungry for talent, I don't want to tap out one market. I want to be able to have the entire North American market at my disposal. So right now we're hiring anywhere. We'd like to see them in person at some point, because I think it's good for everybody to get a chance to meet and work together, but it's by no means a requirement. And I think, for us, the future is something closer to a bit of a hybrid, where people who are close to our development centers are, encouraged to come into the office occasionally and have a beer with your coworker at the end of the day. And, but we're also happy to work with you remote and be Zoom friends.
You can either go to the beach or go skiing at any of your physical locations.
That's right. I'm in Toronto, so the beach sounds really good right about now, given how much snow we have. Hopefully the borders open up soon.
Seriously. So you said the magic words to a lot of developers, which is greenfield projects and platform, right? So I know that's always exciting for engineers kind of build something from scratch. Is that kind of the mobile delivery where the restaurants can take ownership of their, or was that another product?
So there are some customer facing components to it, but there's also our platform layer, which is, really it's an API first platform for restaurants. Our ideal customers are innovators, right? We want them to leverage our platform and our tools to extend their capabilities. So it's both customer, and customer facing, as well as internal to the business for those restaurant brands. And it could be internal as far as like, kitchen to register, or even into the back office side as well. And then everything that connects into it, delivery, loyalty, payments, actually something that we're getting into now with our Power Payment services. So on the financial side as well. So yeah, again, no shortage of opportunities and areas to tackle.
Yeah, when you guys go to your website and it's like, here's what we have to offer, here are the products and here are the services, it's like anything you could do in a restaurant, basically. It's essentially the coverage.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people don't know much about restaurants, and it is new to me too. But we do everything from the displays in the restaurant with the countdown and the bump bars you have to press to say I've delivered this meal, give me the next one. That's all powered by our products, and into the back office as well as what inventory do I order and what orders do I place. We run that all. So if you have a restaurant or a set of restaurants, we are more than set to power everything you need. If you don't have a merchant account, we'll provide you the merchant account. If you don't have the hardware, we'll provide you the hardware. If you want to bring your own hardware, that's great too.
And so one of the things that I saw early on in talking to you was you light up when you talk about the long-term mission of PAR. So can you cover again what that mission was and why that's exciting?
Because our goal is to be the largest hospitality technology company in the world, and we're going to get there by creating differentiated customer experiences. So it's super audacious goals, and it's one of the things I love about our management team. Everyone is thinking big. It's not what we're doing today. It's like 10x that or 100x. Like that's what we want to do. And there's obviously it brings a lot of energy to I think the teams to want to go do that.
So that means every hospitality experience across the board outside of food as well.
Right now we're very focused on restaurants, but
Right.
I think ultimately, like a lot of things, and everything's converging. And hospitality exists in many different areas. I think we will ultimately try and tackle them all. Right now, we're very focused on the restaurant side of things,
Sure.
but over the coming years, I expect that to extend quite readily.
No, it's great. I could see you just light up talking about it. So I wanted to.
I like, I'm an engineer by trade or a developer. I love building, right? There's nothing more fun than building. And there's just so much opportunity to do that. Again, I've got the product management team, begging me every day to spin up more teams and help them build more. So it's just, I think it's every developer's dream. Build.
Where is the best place for them to go? Is it the career site if they want to apply to any of your developer roles?
ParTech.com/careers. It's got all of our listings. You can also find them on LinkedIn. Please reach out. If you don't see something that is right up your alley, please apply anyways. We're happy to discuss. If I'm really set on finding the right people with the right drive and attitude and culture. And if you have that, we'll find the right place for you.
Is there anything else about PAR that we didn't talk about that you want to discuss?
What else can I tell you about PAR that we haven't discussed? I think that the fact that it's sort of being reborn is really interesting. It's been a hybrid on the experience side where like you can come work for an established company that is we're on the stock market. Like it's not a startup that's going to disappear tomorrow. But if you want to bring a lot of agility to it and have that speed, then we want to play in that space too. Like some of the feedback I've gotten from developers, it sounds like we want to be a startup, and it's like, yeah, we do. Not everything about a startup, the days, working till 1 a.m. and taking pay cuts is not a part of being a startup. I look forward to again. And luckily that's not where we're at. So I think it's like the best blend of both of them. You get the startup agility and the drive to to do big things with the right speed, but also a bit of the safety net of being a well-funded public company.
Yeah, it's like a startup with resources, which it doesn't exist, right?
Well, they certainly do. Here's one example.
Exactly. The first example. So I like it. I can see your enthusiasm about all the challenges you guys face, like shining through. So I'm excited for you guys.
I hate being bored. There's nothing worse for me than being bored. And I have not been bored in my 60 or so days here so far.
No, that's great. So literally every single episode, and this is probably one of the first ones I didn't say it, was the worst thing you can have is a bored engineer, right? Because they're not going to be bored very long. They're going to figure out a way to not be bored anymore.
No.
So it's funny you bring that up, because if you just give developers something to build and something to, continue to improve the experience of a customer or a mission to join, like, we're good to go, right?
Yeah, I think it's never been a better time to be a developer. It's such an incredible job market for a developer. If you're bored, I really think you should come work for us. But even if not, there's so many opportunities out there where you don't have to be bored, where you can apply your creativity, your experience. And I know there's a lineup of companies begging to get you. So I hope you give PAR consideration, but certainly don't be bored. That's no fun.
Definitely not. Awesome. Well, I think we can pretty much wrap up. So I appreciate you coming on here, Stephen. We covered a wide array of topics. I appreciate your startup experience, and look forward to see what you guys build over the next year or so.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks.
Take care.